Al-Qaeda abuses the word jihad, Noor Delawari said, noting it has a very, very specific meaning that allows people to defend themselves when threatened, but never to terrorize. Jihad derives from an Arabic term meaning to strive, and in one major sense, it denotes an individual's spiritual striving against sin. Its meaning for group defense, however, was redefined by psychiatrist Ayman al-Zawahiri to mean an all-out campaign of terror against Jews and Crusaders, with Crusaders so loosely identified as to include Americans and based on ample evidence of wholesale slaughter, ethnic Afghans, primarily from northern Afghanistan, who did not support al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The word jihad thereby cloaked planned genocide, even against fellow Muslims, in terms of righteousness. It paved the way for mass deaths, uncounted rapes, and sweeping violations of human rights. Delawari described the subsequent actions of al-Qaeda and their willing Taliban pawns against native Afghans, which included skinning helpless captives alive, condemning them as a work of animals and not Muslims faithful to the teachings of the Quran. But in looking beyond the religious rhetoric, the agenda was patently political. The September 11 murder of thousands of Americans by al-Qaeda operatives emanated from a political terrorist jihad opposing the United States' support of Israel and continuing presence in the Middle East, much as the death by torture of an American official, Bill Buckley, was driven by the political agenda to force the United States and Israel to withdraw from Lebanon. Those experts controlling behavior usually seek to remain behind the scenes, but they are carefully trained, often by governments. Alaboub, for example, learned his craft from KGB psychiatrists at Patrice Lumumba University, since renamed People's Friendship University, a Moscow facility that allegedly taught others in such techniques under the communist regime. The use of psychiatry and its manipulating treatments for political ends, often termed psychopolitics, is an important factor impelling terrorist agendas. Sophisticated terrorist training facilities reportedly have existed in Iran, including camps dedicated to how to brainwash, control, and activate suicide terrorists while in the West. One Iranian source told Freedom that these camps include drugs in their arsenal to alter and control behavior. According to Yosef Badansky, an installation that operated in the 1980s near Persepolis in Iran was manned by expert trainers from such non-Islamic countries as East Germany, Bulgaria, North Korea, and Vietnam. Badansky, former director of the U.S. House of Representatives Task Force on Terrorism and Unconventional Warfare, noted, the East Germans and the Bulgarians were responsible for the development of bombs, explosive charges, and diversified detonators, as well as for preparing the technicians who would assemble the bombs on site. The North Koreans and the Vietnamese turned their trainees into death volunteers thanks to brainwashing. Such camps appear to be fertile ground for creating what Dr. Colin Ross calls Manchurian candidates, using drugs, hypnosis, and other coercive psychiatric means. Terrorist organizations and governments around the world are using these techniques right up to the present day, he said. While the psychiatric weapons wielded by those dominating al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and other terrorist networks are only now coming to light, the ramifications of these dehumanizing and terror-inducing methods are obvious in their effects, including on the Afghan ethnic populations. Anayat Delawari described to Freedom the genocidal tactics that al-Qaeda and the Taliban employed against native Afghans, including destruction of crops, food supplies, rounding up, jailing, torturing, and killing men and boys, and gang raping and often murdering women and girls. Tens of thousands of Muslims from northern Afghanistan were thus exterminated at the hands of al-Qaeda and the Taliban, according to Delawari. At the rate the slaughter proceeded, he said, all of the native peoples of northern Afghanistan would have been wiped out within another year if American and other forces had not intervened. Osama bin Laden and his closest friend and associate, psychiatrist Ayman al-Zawahiri, have been accused of many things, from murder and mayhem to drug trafficking and extortion. So many criminal activities, in fact, that one Afghan interviewed by Freedom likened their al-Qaeda organization to the mafia. If there is any connection to Islam, he said, it is that they have exploited this great religion as a cover for their acts. Another observer, Noor Delawari, accused bin Laden and al-Zawahiri of using Islam as a tool for their own political gains. Delaware, a native Afghan, reinforced what many have said: the terrorist actions of bin Laden, al-Zawahiri, and al-Qaeda have nothing to do with Islam. Evidence also suggests that the same political influences in al-Qaeda are at work in the Taliban. Exploitation of Islam is evident in the Taliban. Canadian journalist Michael Petru, who spent a month on the front lines in northeastern Afghanistan shortly after the American bombing started, told Freedom, "I frequently heard many times from Afghans in northern Afghanistan that the Taliban weren't real Muslims. Islam means submission to the will of God." Counting its history from the flight of Muhammad in 622 from Mecca to Yathrib, later renamed Medina, over the centuries, followers of Islam have made countless positive contributions to thought, culture, science, and art throughout the world, a rich heritage mocked by terrorists who claim to act in its name. Other than the words themselves, there is little difference between al-Zawahiri's jihad and its extermination of Afghan minorities and the Serbian ethnic cleansing as a euphemism for their all-out assault on Bosnians. Indeed, when one hears al-Zawahiri railing about the arrogance and tyranny of the Jewish people, it appears he burned the midnight oil studying the works of psychiatrist Rudin, the Nazis' top ideologist and primary author of the racial hygiene program, who created psychiatric genetics, the pseudoscience that served as the ideological framework for the subsequent slaughter of millions. Between 1933 and 1939, as a direct result of Rudin's work, an estimated 375,000 forced sterilizations were carried out. For more information on psychiatry's role in the Holocaust, read Psychiatrists, the Men Behind Hitler. And in conclusion to this installment of Freedom Magazine, if the drugs and practices of psychiatry are used as weapons of terrorist organizations, the destruction to the American family cannot be underestimated. If you would like to learn more, please contact Freedom Magazine at 323-960-3500 or visit us online at freedommag.org. My name is Dave Figueroa. Thanks for viewing.
Everyone has the right to life, liberty,
and security of person.
Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion
and expression. This right includes the freedom
to hold opinions without interference.
No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his
privacy, family, home, or correspondence,
nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation.
Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion.
This right includes the freedom to change his religion or belief.
All human beings are born free and equal
in dignity and rights.
They are endowed with reason and conscience
and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood.
You can make a difference. Urge the world's governments to fully implement the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.